Both of these generals were interesting to serve under, but Zachary Taylor was interesting to serve with. I really much enjoyed serving with Zachary Taylor. I had to serve under Winfield Scott. You know, I have a feeling like countries are sometimes punished for taking a certain transgression. I think we were punished for our indulgence in the Mexican War by the worst war this country would ever see, the Civil War. I had no plans yet to stay in the military. I was going to, if I ever did, I was going to emulate Zachary Taylor, not Winfield Scott. It is a dreary place, and I had a martinet of a captain in charge of me. Now, you might have heard I like drinking a little bit. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I miss Julia. I had 2 kids, and I drank only when I missed Julia, and I did drink too much. I did drink whiskey. And would you drink whiskey if you lived in a place like this? It didn't take me much to get toasted. I had 2 or 3 glasses of whiskey, and I'm toasted. You know, so I had this reputation as the drinking quartermaster. And Douglas won that. Mr. Lincoln lost that. But I like Mr. Lincoln. He said some things that made a lot of sense, and I could see a good man behind that. And this unit had a commander. They drove him nuts. They drove him nuts, and he quit. So they're looking for a new commander. I said, Grant, you can take those rowdy country boys. You can have them, Colonel Grant. And this is the first action I'm going to see in the Civil War. And you know what? I'm scared to death. I got my men. There's going to be some bloodshed coming up here fighting in Missouri. Well, guess what? Colonel Harris heard I was coming, and he hightailed out of there. All we left was his tents. I learned a very important lesson there. The party that takes the aggressive, the party that attacks first, has a big, big advantage. Harris was more scared of me than I was of him. Down there, we're not going to attack the big fort, Columbus. We're going to attack the smaller force at Belmont on the Missouri side. We go down the river, just a little harrying down there, action on the Missouri side. We took the fort. They're coming across from Columbus to reinforce it, and we got out of there quickly. And I was the last one on the boat with my horse in Belmont. I went to lay down in the cabin house for about a minute, got up, and as soon as I did, a bullet hole went right through where my head was. So I could have been toasted right then and there. And the Northern press said, well, that wasn't much of a battle, Columbus and Belmont. But you know what it did? It got my men the confidence to go through the rest of the Civil War. They realized in themselves that they could do it, and they did. And all my friend Sherman comes by and he says, well, Grant, we had the devil's own day, haven't we? And I said, yeah, but we'll look at them tomorrow. I couldn't stand being still while armies around me were moving. Anyway, I devised a plan where I'm going to take some gunboats on a moonless night, 16 of them, and go by in front of Vicksburg, close to the bank. We're going to build a corduroy road in Louisiana, get our men, and we're going to cross the Mississippi River south of Vicksburg, about 20 miles south, then come back and not attack Vicksburg. We're going to attack Jackson, Mississippi. So I go to Chattanooga. I kind of sneak into Chattanooga, get surrounded, but I found a way in there on my horse. And first thing I did is I relieved General Rosecrans and put in General Thomas. You might have heard of the Rock of Chickamauga. That was a great defensive general, General George Thomas. He was a Southerner fighting for the Union. Underbrush caught on fire. Basically, all my advisors are telling me, Robert E. Lee is going to do this, Robert E. Lee is going to do that. I kept saying, I don't give a damn what Robert E. Lee is going to do. Figure out what we're going to do to Robert E. Lee. After the Wilderness, the Army of the Potomac was like, they had been this far twice before, and they went back to Washington, D.C. every time they got kind of a nosebleed like this one, this Army did. Well, anyway, I decided we're not going back to Washington, D.C. and wipe our nose. We're going to get him again. He was tall, I was short. We both liked cigars, and I was stuck at Petersburg, and Sherman basically made his march to Atlanta and then to the sea by December of 1864. And when Atlanta was taken, that was the crack in the Confederacy that we needed to make a big inroads. And the politicians were, this is an interesting story, the politicians were saying, let's put Sherman in charge of the Petersburg operation, get rid of me, Grant. And this is what Sherman said. He says, well, you know what? Grant's a great general. Now, when I was crazy, he took care of me. When he was drunk, me being drunk, I took care of him. No, sir, I will not replace General Grant. That's all come for you. Good guy. We met with Sherman at City Point, President Lincoln, Admiral Porter, and we were talking about the peace to come, the end of the war and the beginning of the peace. And we wanted to be as kind as we could to the Southerners. The only thing that President Lincoln insisted on is the Union come back together. It's not, we don't have two different countries, and we get rid of slavery. Slavery will not exist anymore. And you know, I did not feel good. Such a noble foe. Such a noble foe, and I don't know if Lee was happy or sad that the war was over. And I thought these were wonderful people, such Confederates, but they had to fight for a cause, slavery, that was so wrong. Basically, I said, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, you take the surrender of the Confederates at Appomattox. This was April 12th, 1865. And you know what Chamberlain does? As the Confederates are stacking up the rifles, he gets his men to salute them. Isn't that interesting? That's what makes this country great. That's what makes this country great. Stuff like that.